Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason, just south of the community of Nauvoo, Illinois. It is very historic. A lot of people who are into LDS or Mormon history do come here. And I will try to take you on a tour. I'll do my best to show you a lot of the restored buildings here. A lot of properties that have stood for almost 2 centuries. But there are plenty of historical markers here that'll kind of help us guide through this community. So I'm going to go ahead and start at this roadside pullout I'm at, and there's a couple, actually there's 3 historical markers here. So let's get started. All right, so this is again a roadside pullout as you enter from the south, and then that's the Veterans Memorial. And over here, that's just tourist information right there. And that house right there, I thought that was a information center, but apparently it's private property, so no going near there. But Nauvoo at one time was called Venus, and then Commerce, and then it was named Nauvoo by Joseph Smith, but learn about it here. This one was put up by the Illinois State Historical Society in 1963. Nauvoo was once the site of a Sauk and Fox village. After the Indians moved west of the Mississippi, promoters attempted to develop town sites here, but the marshy bottom lands attracted few settlers. 1839, the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith chose the town, then called Commerce, as the home for his followers, who had been driven from Missouri. The Mormons named the community Nauvoo, said to mean beautiful place, and obtained a special charter from the Illinois legislature, which gave the city government its own courts, militia, university, and all other governmental powers not prohibited by the federal and state constitutions. Mormon converts from all parts of America and Europe soon swelled the population to about 15,000, making Nauvoo one of the largest cities in Illinois by 1845. But some of the Mormons, as well as their gentle neighbors, began to resent the civil and religious authority of the Mormon leaders, and frictions in the area grew severe. When the Nauvoo City Council had an anti-Mormon newspaper destroyed, the Mormon leaders were arrested and jailed at Carthage, which is about, I want to say, 10 miles east of here. There, on June 27, 1844, an armed mob shot and killed Joseph Smith and his brother, Hyrum. Conflict between the Mormons and their neighbors continued until 1846, when the Mormons completed their exodus from the state. In 1849, Cabot's followers, the Icarians, came to Nauvoo to practice their form of religious communism, but dissensions soon weakened the colony. Their experiment lasted less than 10 years. And on the back are a couple other historical markers. This is an original one. There is also a duplicate one north of town. This was put up in 1936, but I believe the one behind it is the one that replaced it. But yeah, it pretty much says the same thing, but the newer one from 1963 has more detailed information. But it says here, history along the Mississippi River Parkway. This was originally the site of Quashquema, hopefully I'm saying that right, the Indian village. Then the first white settlement by Captain James White in 1824. Then the town was called Venus, first post office in Hancock County established in 1830. Then it became the town of Commerce in 1834. 1839, Nauvoo, City Beautiful, the Mormon era, 1839 to 1846, and Icarian community from 1849 to 1856. And then that's just who it was. Like, this was dedicated by Governor William Stratton, 1955. And I'm going to go ahead and there's a sign that's pointing over there that talks about the old stone arched bridge, and I'll go ahead and see what that's all about. All right, it looks kind of cool. I do not know any history about the stone arch bridge, but once I get home and do some research about it, I'll put it on the screen if I can find anything. But this is a very historic bridge. I don't even know what kind of creek is flowing, but there's a little waterfall on the other end. Very cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you into town. I'm probably going to start right at the Joseph Smith Historic Site, so follow me. If you are interested in taking tours of Nauvoo, there are plenty available. You can do it by just a self-guided tour, or you can have it guided, which, you know, I highly recommend because obviously, you know, the tour guides have a lot of knowledge. This is the visitor center, where the best place to start. So, but I will go ahead and take you on a little tour of some of the notable places. And in front of me is a replica or a reconstruction of the red brick store, which Joseph Smith ran. Well, there's more on this marker. This is a reconstruction of Joseph Smith's red brick store, built on the site of the original structure. He opened the store to the public on January 5th, 1842. At the time, this area was one of Nauvoo's main business districts. Joseph and others used this building as more than a place of business. There was a large room upstairs for educational, cultural, and civic gatherings. The room was also a place of religious gatherings that continue to influence the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints today. In that room on March 17, 1842, Joseph gathered with Latter-day Saint women and organized the Female Relief Society of Nauvoo. Emma Smith, who was Joseph's wife, served as the first president. Today, members of the Relief Society unite throughout the world to strengthen individuals and families, physically and spiritually. And then 6 weeks later, in that same room, Joseph introduced a sacred ceremony called the endowment to a small group of church leaders. In the endowment, individuals make sacred promises to God. They learn about God's eternal plan of happiness and Jesus Christ's central role in that plan. Today, Latter-day Saints participate in the endowment in temples around the world. This site was owned and maintained by the Community of Christ until 2024. So this is very recent, because it's only late March 2024 when I'm doing this video. Now, I did go in there, and there are people that are willing to let you tour the place, give you a guided tour, but I turned it down, unfortunately. But it's definitely really neat to go inside there, and I highly recommend. I did not go upstairs, though. But, yeah, you'll definitely see a reproduction of the dry goods store. In front of me is the mansion house where Joseph Smith and his wife Emma lived. And here's a marker. Tells all about it. Joseph and Emma Smith and their children moved into this home in August 1843. They moved from the home just behind you and to your right. A hotel wing was added to this home soon after they moved in, allowing them to provide lodging for their many guests. They operated the hotel for a few months before leasing it in January 1844. As part of the lease agreement, they kept a portion of their private residence. For their private residence. The hotel wing was torn down in the 1890s, but its foundation is visible behind the home. Joseph lived in this home for less than a year. On June 27, 1844, he and his brother Hyrum were killed while in prison in Carthage, Illinois, sealing their testimony of Jesus Christ with their blood. Their bodies were returned here, where they lay in state for a day before they were buried. After Joseph's death, Emma continued to live in the home for a time with her children, and later with her second husband, Louis the Damon. The site was owned and maintained by the Community of Christ until 2024. And that noise you're hearing is tourists. What's going on? Here is the Smith family homestead. When the Latter-day Saints came to this area, this home was one of the only structures here. It was smaller then, only a 2-story, 2-room long building with a summer kitchen, also made of logs. Let me just move the camera real quick while I read off the marker. Property was purchased in May 1839. Emma and Joseph Smith moved in along with their 4 children. Their names were Julia, Joseph III, Frederick, and Alexander. Joseph's parents lived in the summer kitchen for a short time with their daughter Lucy. This home became a place of refuge for the Smith family. It also became a center of activity for the Latter-day Saints, who looked to Joseph as a prophet of the Lord Jesus Christ. And then there's more details about adding rooms. But in 1843, Joseph and Emma moved to the home they called the Nauvoo Mansion, which is just located right over there. And this site was owned and maintained by the Community of Christ until 2024. And then behind it, I'm going to take you to the Smith family cemetery. Actually, before I take you to the cemetery, this is the Nauvoo House, which is just right across from the homestead. And then it was remodeled as the Riverside Mansion, according to this marker. In a revelation to the prophet Joseph Smith, Jesus Christ commanded the Latter-day Saints to build 2 houses in Nauvoo. One was a temple, the house of the Lord. The other was the Nauvoo House, which was a resting place for the weary traveler, to contemplate the glory of Zion. The saints began building the Nauvoo House in October 1841. By March 1844, they had completed only the basement, made of stone, and part of the first floor, made of brick. Seeing that they could not finish both the Nauvoo House and the temple in a timely manner, the prophet Joseph instructed them to devote all their attention to the temple. Around 1865, Louis Bedaman, the second husband of Joseph's widow Emma, began dismantling portions of the unfinished Nauvoo House. He used the stone to build a stable to the north. He used the brick to remodel the building as it appears today. He and Emma eventually moved in and operated as a hotel called the Riverside Mansion. And like all the other sites, it was owned and maintained by the Community of Christ until 2024. And here's a more wide shot of the Nauvoo House. And now I'll be entering the Smith family cemetery. And it says here, it is the final resting place of Joseph Smith, his wife Emma, and brother Hyrum, Lucy Mack, and Joseph Smith Sr., and many other family members and friends. After Joseph and Hyrum were assassinated at the Carthage jail on June 27, 1844, their bodies were returned to Nauvoo, where they laid in state in the dining room of the mansion house, which was right over there. Fearing for the safety of the bodies, the coffins were emptied and buried in a tomb near the temple, while the bodies were secretly buried between the foundation walls of the Nauvoo House. When construction of the Nauvoo House resumed in 1845, they were secretly reburied under a small building, now reconstructed southwest of the homestead. In 1928, Frederick Madison Smith, president and prophet of the church from 1915 to 1946, and grandson of Joseph Smith Jr., hired Kansas City, Missouri surveyor W.O. Hands to locate the unmarked graves of Joseph and Hyrum. Once located, they were moved a few feet north and reburied for the final time. Let's check it out. Now that is the final resting place of Joseph and Emma and Hyrum, but I'm going to check out what's over here first, because it looks to be some stones. Yep. And then that is the Mississippi River, and that's Missouri. And then this is the final resting place of Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack. This is Eve Smith, daughter of Joseph Smith III and Emmeline. Arthur Smith, son of Joseph Smith III and Emmeline. And then that's Emmeline Griswold Smith, wife of Joseph Smith III. These were all placed here in 2002. Well, these three were. And now here's the final resting place of Joseph Smith Jr., his wife Emma, and his brother Hyrum. He was born in Sharon, Vermont, 1805. Along with his brother, he died June 27th, 1844 in Carthage, Illinois. His wife was born in 1804 in Harmony, Pennsylvania, and died in Nauvoo in April 30th, 1879. I'll go ahead and read off one of the markers about Joseph Emma and Hyrum Smith. The founder of the Restoration, his wife and his brother possessed an enduring love and devotion toward each other. Joseph once described the bond between himself and Hyrum as love that is stronger than death. Joseph and Emma's marriage and family life were often tested by hardships and persecutions. Joseph was an affectionate husband and Emma's true and living friend. Joseph called Emma a beloved companion who was firm, unwavering, unchangeable, and affectionate. Both expressed joy in the unending quality of their love. And like I said, there are plenty of historic buildings. Like that right there was the Jonathan and Rebecca Wright home. And this is the Aaron and Polly Johnson home. However, we can't go in. They're not part of the tour because people actually live there, private residences. But still, it's cool to see the retro brick houses as part of this community. And now we're going to go inside the Pioneer Memorial. And here, upon these walls, are the names of those who died before their journey's end. In addition to these, others died who are lost from our records, but are remembered unto the Savior. All in alphabetical order. Isaac, Abel, and it continues over there. Exodus to greatness. Near here, the Mormon exodus to the Rocky Mountains began on February 4th, 1846. In 7 years, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly called the Mormons, had built Nauvoo to a size comparable to Chicago, with approximately 11,000 population. Fleeing enemies, these refugees crossed the Mississippi River with their wagons on flatboats, except to a few days when they crossed on ice. Under Brigham Young, they crossed Iowa and the Mississippi River. On its west bank, they endured the winter of 1846 to 1847 at winter quarters in tents, dugouts, and log huts. The trek from there began with the departure of Brigham Young's first company on April 7th, 1847, reaching Salt Lake Valley on July 24th, 1847. Seeking freedom to worship God, as they believed, more than 50,000 Mormon pioneers, mostly with ox-drawn wagons or hand carts, crossed the plains to the Rocky Mountains before the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, May 10, 1869. With Salt Lake City as their base, the Latter-day Saints under Brigham Young, who died in 1877, founded more than 350 communities in the Rocky Mountains. And this was placed here in 1978. And then across from the Pioneer Memorial is a marker from the National Park Service, because this is part of the Mormon Pioneer National Historic Trail and the Iowa Mormon Trails Association. But this one talks about their long journey, and as it said on the previous marker, 13,500 Mormon pioneers fled Nauvoo, Illinois in search of religious freedom. They departed in phases to prepare the way for those who would follow. So they traveled about 1,300 miles across Iowa into the western mountains. After a very difficult trek, the first immigrants arrived in Great Salt Lake Valley in 1847. Thousands more came later. Now, this is considered a starting point, and it goes all the way into Salt Lake City. And I went there last year, and I still have some videos to put up. But here's a little chart. 56,500 immigrants from 1847 to 1869. This was the largest planned migration in the United States, totaling nearly 70,000 by 1869. About 1/5, or 13,500 immigrants, left from Nauvoo in 3 main groups in the first year. Later, travelers started their journeys from other places over the next 2 decades. And here's a map from that trail. Now, here is Salt Lake City, and it talks about, this is the Place Heritage Park, where I have a video on, and then goes into Wyoming, and then western Nebraska is Chimney Rock. Hope to visit there sometime. And then Omaha winter quarters, and then into Iowa, and then in Nauvoo, where it started. There is plenty more to discover while in the old town part of Nauvoo, including the Trail of Hope, which talks about what the Mormons wrote in their diaries. There is the place where Brigham Young once lived, and old shops. And lastly, in front of me is the Mormon Temple. And across the street is Nauvoo City Hall and police. And next to it is the National Historic Landmark, the whole town of Nauvoo as a whole. It was designated that way in 1961. Here's actually a better shot of it, of the temple. This was commenced April 6th, 1841. And again, this was reconstructed in 2000. I say they did a really nice, marvelous job. And then I'm going to go ahead and take you to those statues. And these statues are of Joseph and Hyrum Smith, their journey, the Prophet's Last Ride. On the morning of June 24th, 1844, Joseph Smith and his brother Hyrum left their families, homes, and fellow saints for the last time, traveling on horseback. They paused on this bluff. Joseph looked admiringly at the unfinished temple and the city of Nauvoo and declared, "This is the loveliest place and the best people under the heavens." Little do they know the trials that await them. Joseph and Hyrum then continued on to Carthage, Illinois, where they faced legal charges and eventual death at the hands of a mob. And this was sculpted by Stan Watts and Kim core penny in 2003. I'm going to take a close look here. And this, yes, this is still a bluff. I mean, you get a nice view of the Mississippi River. And then, yeah, as they overlook the temple. All right, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked. Sorry I didn't really show you a lot, but there's plenty to see in this town. And as I said in the intro, I definitely recommend the tour, like guided tours, and plan on an afternoon here. I don't really know how long the tours usually take, but a lot of exploring to do, put it to you that way. But I am Jason in historic Nauvoo, Illinois, signing off.